Sometimes I get lost and can't distinguish. Do I think my feelings or feel my thinking? Then I'm lost. Sometimes I get lost trying to distinguish. Do I think my feelings or feel my thinking? Confusion deluxe, and the downward spiral begins. In this moment, it's somehow all the same thinking, feeling, consciousness. I lose insight. Can you imagine what I'm talking about? And can you talk about that? Sorry, didn't introduce myself. This is Jonas from Berlin. Hi, Jonas. Nice. I don't know what you're talking about. It's never been a problem for me, that. I can't imagine how that's a problem. But I just get an intuition that you're talking about the solar plexus. So in our bodies, we have 7 main chakras. So we have the root chakra. We have the chakra below the belly button, the sacral chakra, 2. We have the solar plexus, 3. We have the heart chakra, 4. We have the throat chakra, 5. We have the third eye, 6. And we have the crown chakra, 7. On the human level, so this isn't talking about non-duality, but on the human level, because in non-duality, like what is doesn't feel anything. Like what is, who you truly are, is empty and full simultaneously, but it's experiencing feelings, but it's free of feelings. So on the absolute level, there is no suffering, there is nobody to suffer, and there is no feelings. But on the relative level, on the human level, we have these 7 major chakra points, and we feel the chakras all over the body. Eventually, when you really get into the body, it all begins to break down, and you see that the body and the world are the same, and that there is no feeling inside the body, there's no feeling outside the body, and it's really life, everything's feeling. But for me to point to them, I have to talk about the bodily areas. But eventually that will begin to break down the bodily areas. It's just a reference point to talk about. And knowing these chakras is super helpful because it helps you understand what you feel. Thinking lies. It's always telling a lie, thinking. It can't ever really talk about what is. It's always not quite right. And that's okay, that it's not quite right. That thinking is more like a poem. Like when we talk and when we speak, we're more like trying to point to something than we are actually trying to talk about something. We're pointing to something. So say if you're talking about love and heartache, you're describing it to someone in order for them to get a feeling of what you're talking about. Like if it's maths or if it's science, it's maybe more precise, but most of our language is about describing something in order to get our meaning across. So if you talk about like heartache, like the way that somebody treated you and the relationship you had, you're trying to give the other person an impression and you're giving them colors, but you're not actually for sure talking about that relationship because it's way too complicated with way too many hours in the day for you to communicate that. You're giving a sense of what it is, but it's not truth. It's not reality. In society, we're taught that thinking is reality and thinking is real and what you think is the way it is, where this is really not true. Thinking is like art. You're trying to paint pictures for people to understand through imagery. And just take for an example, the fact that I'm a body now, so, well, not me, but Lisa, the character, is this body, is by, in your mind, thinking that I'm not the chair, I'm not the wall, I'm not the air, I'm not all these other things. So in comparison to them, you know that I'm this body that's contained inside the skin thing. And we have all these words, and our words, by default, are telling you what we're not. And that's how we know what something is. So if you talk about the fact that I'm white only in comparison to all other people, or blonde, only in comparison to other colors, we only know it in comparison. Our language isn't a fixed thing. So when I say thinking's lying, I'm not saying that all humans are lying, but it's not the truth of the situation. It's a tool. That's all it is a tool. And a lot of the time what we're thinking about is quite strongly deluded, because firstly, we've been taught that we are a person inside the body. So you are somebody that exists inside the body. And secondly, you've been taught you're somebody that moves through time. And thirdly, you've been taught that your person is the center of the world. So it's like your thinking is already based on a non-truth, on something that isn't fact, that isn't actually correct. So, and a lot of our thinking is actually about survival. We have no knowledge of that, but it's actually about you trying to find the best form of you with whatever tools you can. Even if you're being self-destructive to yourself, your mind is trying to give you the best opportunity to survive, even if it's being self-defeating. Its goal is to be the best you it can be. But it might be that you're programmed that the best you can be is an asshole, is a bad person. It depends on the way that you've been conditioned. So what you think most of the time isn't what you feel. But your thinking can derive from what you feel. And also your feelings can derive from what you think. So let me give you an example. So say you go into a situation and you instantly feel that all other people are superior to you. So you go into a work situation and suddenly you have this sense that other people are superior to you. But you don't think that in your mind. You don't tell yourself a story. Yep, all other people here are way superior to me. What happens is your mind starts talking about something else, about the way that you look, about work you didn't do, or about you didn't prepare enough, or the way you're dressed, or who's there, or what an asshole that person was to you the last time, or how you hate these events. So that's what your mind does, because you've already felt a negative emotion. So your mind is trying to compensate for that negative emotion, and it's trying to put reason to it, but there's no consciousness of it. So because you haven't labeled to yourself, I feel insecure, what your mind does is it's trying to find ways to feel better than the other person. But often what it does is it makes itself feel worse and inadequate and insecure. So it can either beat itself up, it can take like feeling really insecure and on itself and say you're not dressed well enough, you didn't do this well enough, you didn't do that well enough. And if you think about it, what the mind's trying to do is for next time it's trying to make you better, but actually it produces all this psychological issues. And then, or it can do the other where it puts other people down in order to feel better about itself. But actually when you walked in there, your first feeling was insecurity. Your first feeling was that you are lower than other people, or that you don't know what to say. And this is actually a really normal thing when you go into a group, to feel insecure when you go into a new group. This is very human. I feel insecure if I go into a new big group, dependent on the situation. But I particularly feel insecure if I know that they're not into philosophy, non-duality, if they don't think outside of the box, because I feel like I don't know. It's not so easy to communicate with these people, and I also want to be authentic with people. So I have to find my position, like I have to find a way, like this body has to find a way to communicate with people while being authentic. And so this can create insecurity. It's very normal to go into a group. What we think is we like to think, we'll get into non-duality and we're going to go into a group and never feel insecure again and never be human. But it's really normal. And what that feeling does is it can help aid us to be the best possible version of ourselves on the human level. It can encourage us to overcome things, to be empathetic, to understand others, to be reflective on ourselves. It doesn't necessarily need to be a negative thing, but we always think of painful feelings as negative things, especially in the spiritual world, and I shouldn't feel them. To me, wisest way of being on the human level is to be as in touch with your body as you can be, and to be as honest with yourself as you can be. And that's not also always possible. There's always going to be unconscious. No matter how aware you are, there's still going to be things you're unconscious of. This thing is too complicated to completely understand. But to be as basic as you can and as simple as you can. So as soon as you walk into that environment, you register that you feel insecure. So you register that and you're just honest with yourself. I feel insecure. Rather than going off into stories about what assholes other people are or what an asshole you are. So you just register it and you feel it. And you allow that feeling to be there. And you don't, you come to a point where you're not trying to fulfill that. So you're not trying to put other people down or get other people to like you in order to fulfill it. You're just embracing it. And of course, the natural energy of the human is to get on and to be part of a group. So you let the body do that. But there's not this other part that's trying to use other people to fulfill it. The way that you get to know your body is getting to know the chakra system. It's a really profound system. It's really complicated. I don't actually think you need to know really complex stuff about the chakra system, but just a basic understanding of what your body's saying. And my experience with all humans is that everybody feels things in the same places. So when you have heartache, you feel it in the heart. And our language says this, you know, I've got a broken heart. When you are scared, you want to shit your pants because you feel it in the sacral chakra. When you've got lots of choice or anger, you feel it here. You can feel it. When you can't speak, when you can't express yourself, you feel it here. When you overthink, when you obsessively think, you feel it here. When you're also being imaginative and creative, you feel it in the third eye. So it's just having a basic understanding of that. So that whenever you go anywhere, rather than putting all your attention into thinking, which is what most people do, and what you can get from the situation and how things suit you or your benefit, is going in and just having a general sense of what your body is telling you. The reason that this can be difficult for people that are very high intelligence is because they've put too much energy in the third eye, so in the thinking area, and so they find it difficult to put their attention into their body and feel things. They've just cut themselves off to be ahead. So putting your attention down is often difficult for people, to go down into the body. But there's so many great things out there, the chakra meditations, tantra courses. I do chakra work when I have my retreats. You can buy videos on my website with chakras in it. You can study other people's chakra systems. You can do Osho chanting, chakra meditation, and all of it helps you put attention into the body. And you can use massage, Reiki, like where do I feel this now, and curiosity. And this is really helpful for the person on the human level. But it's not that person that's going to wake up. Your daydream of not having feelings and not having emotion and avoiding all this human shit is just a daydream. But that's not what you really want. That's just what the person wants. It sees pain as the problem and painful emotions as the problem, and I have to get away from them, and I have to be empty, and I have to be blank, and I have to be just pure consciousness, watching in the distance, in the background, far away from my emotions. But that's not the way it is. That's the way it is when waking up happens, but then there's an integration, and so it's looking through this human, and the human becomes really freaking human. But it's nobody, but then there's this other part that there's nobody there being human, that you're not that character. So there's this deep knowing or this shift that happens where who you are isn't that. So there isn't this attachment to pleasure, this attachment to I've always got to be in a state of pleasure, I've always got to be hoping for the future, I've always got to be attempting to arrive in the future. Thank you for your question.